Martha, Dee Dee, let's pick it up where we left off. Listed at the top of Agenda 47's platform is this quote: "Seal the border and stop the immigrant invasion." Migrants are mentioned throughout the document as illegal immigrants, with implications of negative impacts in nearly every policy category. That includes draining Medicare, overburdening systems meant for veterans. Dee Dee, how has this type of rhetoric, whether it's in that document or at a Trump rally, shaped the national conversation and the conversation here in New Mexico about immigrants?
Well, I think it's had a very damaging effect, particularly here in New Mexico, where immigration is a part of the fabric of our life here in New Mexico. Almost every family in New Mexico has some connection to immigrants. They may be their fathers, their mothers, their grandfathers, and not just from Mexico, but from other places as well. And in New Mexico, you know, we have 6,000 or so, maybe more, dreamers. There is a tremendous economic impact from dreamers, and also from maybe the 60,000 or so undocumented workers here in New Mexico. So there are a lot of these folks in New Mexico. They're contributing to the economy. And so hearing that rhetoric, I think, just strikes fear into their hearts. And with fear into their hearts, it means they're not going to be able to, or they feel they're not able to apply for a driver's license or go to the police in a case of domestic violence, which is really threatens all of our public safety here in New Mexico. So it's having a very damaging effect, in addition to, you know, creating this sort of 1930s atmosphere of enemies without permeating our borders, and we need to arm ourselves and protect ourselves from the aliens and the others. That kind of a mentality is the groundwork for authoritarian rule.
Yikes. And that's leaving aside the notion of people eating pets, right?
Oh, yeah.
I want to get to a couple of statistics really quick. From Pew Research, 6 in 10 voters say immigration is a very important issue to them. That's a 9% increase since the 2020 presidential election and a 13% jump since the 2022 midterms. How will the policies, Martha, that are outlined in Project 2025 play with voters in New Mexico?
Well, one way, and Dee Dee just mentioned it briefly, agriculture here is greatly supported by immigrants. And just on the way here today, I was listening to the radio, and they were talking about if there's, in this state as well as others that depend on immigrants to harvest the food, do the work in the fields, which we know, it will greatly affect the food supply and the food supply chain if there's mass deportation. I don't think that they can pull it off to the degree they're claiming, you know, boxcars and using the Navy, for example, but it does suppress people's, if they are illegal or maybe think they might be suspected of being illegal, they're a little less willing to publicly take the job or do some of the work that they've been doing because they fear deportation, whether it would be fair to them or not. And maybe members of their family would be affected, and they know that. Mm-hmm. And so I think the fear factor is very great with our state as well as other border states. I have friends in Arizona that are agonizing over this in their state as well. And of course, Texas, the leadership in Texas is not immigrant friendly either. Mm-hmm. So
let's stay on immigration for just a second. I want to talk legality. Agenda 47, which again is the tamer version of the Republican plan, mm-hmm. calls for, quote, the largest deportation operation in American history. Mm-hmm. Project 2025, of course, echoes that sentiment. Can Trump do this? Is it legal?
I don't know. whether it's legal or not. I mean, because the word illegal is spread around every chance they get. I do have one thing that they are doing, though, that is quite scary. The policy right now is that immigration agents do not come into so-called protected areas, which are schools, churches, hospitals, to harass and pick people up.
Courthouses, too.
Yeah, and they're going to change that, where they can go anywhere, anytime. And it speaks of Nazis.
Yeah, and I think in the area of immigration, there is more leeway for executive actions than there are, and it's been so hard to get an overall solution through Congress that the presidents have been called upon to do various things. You know, one of the things that I find most frightening about these documents is, in terms of immigration, is the idea that they are moving beyond just so-called illegal immigrants into birthright citizens. Birthright citizens are people who have been born in the United States to folks that came from other countries, and they now are subject to deportation. That is going to have a huge impact in New Mexico. I think it is totally illegal and will be challenged in court, but it's just a fear tactic, yes, I think, that is being used to create fear, to create ill will and division amongst the folks of Hispanic origin themselves, so that they will, be afraid of anybody coming in more recently. And I don't know whether that's working or not, but it's very dangerous.
Yeah, the birthright citizenship part 2 is also undercovered. It's not enough a part of the public discourse. Go ahead, Martha.
Well, here's a direct quote from Project 2025 that is chilling. Project 2025 says it has a call to reinstate, quote, every rule related to immigration that was issued, unquote, during Trump's first term. Mm-hmm. And if it's every rule, then it's going to be every rule and more, right, if he gets back in.
And remember, one of those rules was family separation.
Yes.
Let's go to the economy for just a moment. The first chapter of Agenda 47 calls for a cut, unquote, costly and burdensome regulations, end quote. Based on the recommendations from Project 2025, what exact regulations would be cut, and what would that mean for working people in New Mexico and the rest of the country?
Well, this is a common thread throughout the document, and that is to cut back on regulations. It's not surprising. It's a conservative Republican talking point for years. But in this case, it has many dire consequences. For example, cutting back on regulations for PFAS, toxic chemicals, for lead, cutting back on all the regulations that undergird the Clean Air and the Clean Water Act, cutting back on all of the regulations, for example, for Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security that, for example, allow the federal government to negotiate with drug companies, to issue regulations that restrain insurance companies from a lifetime cap on benefits in both Medicaid and Medicare. Those are some of the regulations that would be affected. I mean, it's an across-the-board thing, so you can't even really enumerate all of the regulations. This is all of the regulations that supplement congressional laws that are made by Congress and signed by the president. This is made more dangerous by the fact that the Supreme Court, under the Chevron decision, has said that the president and Congress don't have to abide by those regulations. And in New Mexico, of course, it's like the methane rule that would prevent you know, the escape of methane gases from old wells and mines. And this would have a very severe impact on public health.
Let's talk about some additional cuts that are outlined in these documents. Agenda 47's plans include closing the Federal Department of Education, and Project 2025 calls for the elimination of Title I, which is meant to provide financial help to high poverty schools. There are hundreds of Title I schools in New Mexico. Martha, what would either of these plans mean for students in schools in New Mexico, and who gets hit hardest?
Well, low-income kids get hit the hardest because they're the most likely to be in the public schools. The majority of kids are in the public schools, but some of them could be moved out by their parents if the income is sufficient. If this stuff, they're going to do away with the Department of Education. It is blatant. They say they're going to close the Department of Education. There will be no more Head Start. There will be no kindergarten and pre-kindergarten that has any kind of federal funding. I have to say, as an aside, another thing in this regulation thing, which we didn't get to, is worker safety. There will be no worker safety
Forget
regulation.
OSHA,
OSHA's gone.
Yeah.
But in terms of the Department of Education, it's gone too. And there's a particular little barb in there for my side of the table, I would say, or ours, and that is reproductive health, because we'll get into that later.
We will.
But in education, they want to push the idea and incentivize. Now, we don't know what incentivize means right now, but incentivize at-home childcare.
Right.
So what is that? I mean, who's going to do that? I don't think the president of Exxon is going to be doing it at home childcare.
I think you're right. That's another yikes moment for the end
Yeah.
of this part of the conversation. We'll be back here at the table in just a couple to talk about some of the other issues, including abortion rights.